Copyright is the legal concept that works such as art, writing, images, music, and more belong to the people who create them. Fair use is any copying of copyrighted material done for a limited and transformative purpose, such as to comment upon, criticize, or parody a copyrighted work.
Intellectual properties, or more commonly referred to as IPs, are often defined as ideas, inventions, and creative expressions based on how there will be an overall public willingness to bestow the status of property on said ideas. Though we have covered intellectual property, which can sometimes be referred to as IP, there's another version that one can be confused about if one doesn't know. That being industrial property, which is the side of property that deals with patents for inventions, trademarks, industrial designs, and geographical indications. Governments have been interested in making intellectual property based on sound evidence. Date for advocacy is used primarily by special interest lobby groups. It encompasses literary works, novels, films, music, artistic works, and architectural designs. At the end of the day, intellectual property pretty much pertains to any original creations from humans.
Copyright infringement is the theft of any creative idea or product that is not your own. Copyright infringement is extremely important to the editorial process because we want to make sure that everything we edit is an original piece of work by the person submitting it to you. No one wants their name on a stolen piece of work. In 2010, there was a bill passed in order to protect creative minds against copyright infringement. This act is called the Combating Online Infringement and Counterfeits Act. This act gives the Department of Justice the ability to target domain names on infringement sites, meaning any domain found on sites that sell copyrighted property can be charged. Once the domain is targeted, the Department of Justice has the ability to create a civil suit against them. If they find that a civil suit is not enough to defer said domain, they may create restraining order against the domain. The Department of Justice also has the ability to charge the domains no matter where they are registered, which means that even if the domain is registered outside of the country, they can still be charged with infringement. And lastly, this act protects third-party sellers and requires the Attorney General to provide guidance and establish standards for execution of this act. Even though it is easy to be accused of copyright infringement, it's not always easy to win a case. Two cases that I found particularly interesting are RescueCom versus Google and Donnie versus PETA. RescueCom sued Google because they believed that Google was using their keyword program to place more competitor-paid ads above the RescueCom website when people searched RescueCom. RescueCom also alleged that Google made 97% of its revenue from these paid ads, while RescueCom was losing business because people would go to the competitors' paid ads instead of the RescueCom website. RescueCom ended up losing the case because the court found that Google's infringement did not involve RescueCom's trademark in their searches. The second case is Donnie versus PETA. In 1995, Michael Donnie created a website called PETA.org, P-E-T-A, which stood for People Eating Tasty Animals. The name was clear on the website page, but the animal rights activist group called PETA claimed that Donnie was using their name for his website. At first, Donnie claimed that the website was for an educational nonprofit organization, even though no organization exists. When that didn't work, he tried to claim that the account was a parody account. PETA won the case because the court found that Donnie's website could only be recognized as a parody by actually going to the site. These two cases show that even with evidence, an infringement verdict is not an easy thing to achieve. At the end of the day, when giving a verdict on a copyright case, the court looks at 4 things. 1. Why and how the copyrighted work is used. 2. What the copyrighted work is. 3. How much of the work has been used. And 4. The effect the infringement has on the work's value for the owner. Because there are so many things to think about in infringement cases, this creates a lot of loopholes. For example, when Donnie tried to use the parody loophole, he lost his case after lying about it at the beginning of his case. This shows that loopholes don't work 100% of the time. Taylor will tell us more about the different types of loopholes in the next segment.
Commentary and criticism are the fair use principles that allow the use of copyrighted material when commenting and critiquing works of literature. The goal is for the copyrighted material is to enhance the work in order to benefit the reader, but it is not meant for the copyrighted work to be used in its entirety. As an editor, this is important considering that things such as book reviews and other works will require the use of copyrighted work for enhancement purposes. Some examples of commentary and criticism is quoting lines from a song, using passages for a book review, and summarizing and quoting copyrighted work in articles. For example, quoting work in a review or criticism for purposes of illustration or commenting will be normally used under the Fair Use Clause. A book reviewer will be permitted to quote passages from a book in a newspaper column as part of an examination of the book. Now I will be pointing out how the rules of commentary and criticism are used appropriately in this example, using the rules mentioned earlier. The author is doing a poetry analysis, and we will determine if this particular paragraph will fall under fair use or infringement. The purpose of this excerpt is to enhance the analysis of the poem. Without the quote, the paper would not have as much evidence to support the argument. The quantity used is a small portion of the poem, and it does not cloud the writer's voice. This is a sound example of commentary and criticism and how it is used effectively. Being familiar with the rules of commentary and criticism is important as an editor because it will be detrimental to know what is infringement and what is not when reviewing manuscripts. An entertainer by the name of B. Simone recently published a book entitled Manifest the Life You Want, and it is now facing criticism from people claiming that her book is a collection of stolen copyrighted material. As an editor with the knowledge of commentary and criticism and other fair use rules, would have done the research to ensure that the author was not on the cusp of infringement. The rules of commentary and criticism are important, but it is just a portion of what falls under fair use. So now Brenda will expand more on the other characteristics of fair use.
Fair use is protection offered under the law that allows the use of copyrighted material under certain circumstances. Unless explicitly given, editors do not have copyrights to their edited works. However, editors should be aware of copyright and fair use laws for the instances where an author's work references copy. The limits of fair use are determined by considering these 4 factors: the nature of the work, the amount of work used, the market effect of using the work, and the purpose for use. If the nature of the copyrighted material is informative, such as educational tools or factual reports, it is usually okay for use. The amount of copyrighted work being reproduced also determines if it can be considered fair use. For example, small quotes from a larger body of work usually does not require copyright permissions. However, in the case of duplicating an entire work or majority of the work for the purpose of reviewing it, it is not considered fair use. When determining if something is fair use, one must take into account how the use will affect the original work's market value. If the use compromises the work's market value by diminishing the potential for profit, it is not considered fair use. Using small parts from the original work in a way that promotes the original work being seen can be considered fair use. The reason for using the work must be considered as well. It should be presented in a new and unique way that offers a different meaning than the original work. These are not exclusive factors for measuring fair use, but they are a reliable standard for judgment. Copy editors should use their discretion and these 4 factors when determining if something requires copyright permissions.
An overview of copyright and fair use. What to remember: intellectual property, copyright infringement, commentary and criticism, and the 4 exceptions to fair use. This is important for editors to know because it will protect their clients from possible infringement charges. Without an editor knowing the exceptions to fair use and copyright, then it opens up the possibility of the person stealing intellectual property. We hope this video gave you an insight on copyright and fair use as it pertains to editors.